Good morning, and thank you for joining us to talk about emergency communications for parking garages and parking lots. My name is Tim Means. I'm Director of Product Management at Metasecure. Joining me today is Dave Hawkendoner, our Chief Technology Officer. Today we'll talk about the risk factors that drive the need for emergency communications in parking facilities. We'll look at key issues with installation or upgrade of these systems, and we'll also show you an example of a modern IP-based parking area emergency communication system. So let's jump right in. The three major security and safety threats in parking facilities are criminal incidents, safety hazards, and facility attacks. In each case, steps can be taken to reduce the risks. Overall safety can be improved by using passive design elements such as good lighting, signage, and even landscaping. Active measures such as having a visible security presence and modern emergency communications are also effective. Let's take a closer look at parking lot crime. Parking lot crime equates to assaults on people, property damage, and theft. The crime rates in the U.S. for parking lots and parking garages can be as high as 1,000 incidents per day. So it's clear that parking areas invite crime. But why is that? First, there aren't a lot of people in parking areas at any given time, which means victims of parking lot crime are often alone. Also, people go to their cars during late night hours after a show or catching a flight at an airport, for example. Because of the nature of parking garage design, sightlines tend to be poor. It's easy for an attacker to hide between parked cars or in dark corners and surprise a potential victim. And people are often carrying valuables or distracted as they talk on a phone or searching for their keys, making them an easy target. Also, many parking spaces are wide open, so it's easy for criminals to get in or get out without detection. While some of the passive design elements like good lighting and improved sightlines, access control can minimize the risk of crime in your parking areas, those efforts will not eliminate it. Therefore, most large parking areas need some combination of security presence and emergency help stations so people can reach security personnel before, during, or after an incident. From insurance accident and injury claims, we also know that trips, falls, and vehicle collisions with pedestrians pose another major threat to parking lot safety. Once again, good lighting, traffic design, and visible markings help notify people of dangerous spaces or conditions are helpful. These incidents are accidental in nature, but when someone is hurt, your ability to get assistance to them will be important. Once again, providing a way for people in need to quickly reach security makes it possible to rapidly deploy medical aid, and you may minimize liability claims. The third and final major risk category involves terroristic attacks launched on your main facility from or through the parking area. Most threats you deal with day to day are the ones we just discussed, crime and safety hazards in the parking areas themselves. A mass casualty attack on your facility will hopefully never happen, but it is a real risk, and if it does happen, it's likely to be catastrophic. FEMA warns against vehicle bombs, particularly in parking facilities that are located near or under buildings where people work, play, and live. Many facilities these days separate the parking areas from the main habitable spaces in order to limit this risk. However, in a crowded urban area, that may not always be possible. Another example is where the attacker comes through the parking lot. No system guarantees protection from an attack like this, but good security and emergency communications on the perimeter of parking areas can give you an opportunity for early detection and warning about a potential threat.
These multiple category risks have made parking garages a common setting for liability lawsuits. As the operator of a parking facility, you may be held responsible for accidental injuries such as trip and falls, and for injuries or damage that occur on your premise, even if caused by a third party. Here's an example of the legalese language used in Pennsylvania that addresses this issue. The specific language will vary from locale to locale, but is typically to base liability judgments on what incidents can be reasonably anticipated, and judge security measures based on what is reasonable and standard for similar facilities. In other words, if your facility is in a bad neighborhood or has a history of criminal incidents, then the law requires you to provide reasonable protection. Therefore, what the law calls foreseeability is a major factor in addressing the potential for liability of your parking garage. If there is a demonstrated pattern or past history of incidents, the liability risks are higher. An owner needs to know not just the incidents that have happened at or near the facility, but also in the general area. That's according to John Nolan, Director of Transportation Services at Harvard University. Your local police department should be able to give you an overview of your area's crime profile on a block-by-block basis.
Dave, the good news is that the standard for reasonable emergency communications in parking lot areas is evolving. Here are some of the systems we have seen, traditional systems we've seen in parking facilities. Often you'll see a set of panic buttons. Those systems may light a light in the security office, but typically provide no way for a person in need to speak with security and tell them what's wrong. In our experience, this has been a big problem because security ends up having to dispatch someone every time the panic button alerts, but they have no idea whether they're responding to an assault or a dead car battery or some other type of incident. In fact, we recently installed an IP-based emergency help system in a parking garage that previously only had panic buttons which rang a bell and lit a strobe in a local area. The manager of the facility told us there was very little chance of that system alerting anyone who could help unless they just happened to be walking by that space when the strobe went off. We also see plain old telephone service emergency phones and traditional intercom systems that allow people to speak with security, but they don't provide an automatic identification of the caller's location. People in distress become disoriented easily. In a parking garage, often the different levels and floors look the same. Having to spend time to figure out the caller's location will significantly hamper emergency dispatch speed and effectiveness. Typically, the systems in the parking facilities are not supervised. So if a phone or a button fails, you may not know it unless you test it regularly. The worst case, bottom line is, if someone tries to use it and it doesn't work, you may be open to a liability issue. So to look at a modern parking garage emergency communication system, we would want to see these following 5 capabilities. First, that two-way voice communication component. Security personnel and emergency callers need to be able to speak to each other. Secondly, automatic location identification. Panic caller may not be able to identify his or her location in a crisis, so a system that identifies that location makes that much easier for the security dispatcher. Device supervision. So a system that monitors the calling devices is important. An emergency communications device that fails without you knowing it sets up your organization for a potential lawsuit. Outbound emergency notification. You should be able to communicate with everyone in the garage at once if needed. For example, if someone has seen a suspicious package or some other incident. And finally, integration with other existing systems such as video surveillance, access control, or even gas detection.
We put together a demo video of our system in a parking garage. This will provide a good idea of how an IP-based emergency communication system would work at your facility. Here we can see our outdoor emergency box with some key factors. There's a bright blue light on the top. There's an LCD screen that can show information about the text and the exact warnings. When you send an emergency alert to multiple stations, the strobe will flash. The screen will display the information with text instructions. A siren will sound, and clear voice instructions are broadcasted to everyone in the area, all within a second or two. Let's continue on ahead and let's look at the actual user interface that the dispatcher would see. Let's freeze it here. When a call comes in, you can see a couple things happen. If you press the request for help, it actually shows up on the map, and it actually pops up the exact location. We also have the ability of sending out alerts on the left-hand side by just simply clicking the button, and that can be for whether it's a gas buildup in the garage or tornadoes or shelter in place or whatever the event might be. So let's take a look at somebody actually using the system. As you can see, someone could just simply walk up to the indoor device and press a button, and they're immediately connected to the dispatcher. The light's flashing, they see on the screen. The dispatcher pops up with the thing to box, answer the call. Simply click on the box. It's instantly pulled them over to the exact location they're at, and then they can do a press to talk and talk to that person easily. So the person is talking hands-free, and they don't have any more things to do. When they're done communicating, it's easy enough to hang up the call by pressing the hang up button here in the lower left-hand corner, and it will confirm that you want to hang up so that no mistakes are made. One nice feature is that all the data, as well as the actual voice conversation, is stored automatically in the logs. So you can go back at any time and listen to both the conversation as well as the time and date of the event and when it happened.
So Dave, that's how easy it is to manage a call for help or a request for help from one of the help stations. The MetaSecure system also provides outbound emergency notification when needed. That means you can alert a single area or a single floor, the entire parking facility, or all the buildings and outdoor areas at your site. The system also provides many integration options to help consolidate multiple layers of security and life safety systems. For example, you can integrate the pan, tilt, zoom, or PTZ video surveillance cameras that can be integrated so that they are directed to look at the help station when the button is pressed, giving you not only the voice communications and the location identification, but the ability to see into that space. Some enclosed garages have gas detectors tied into the ventilation system to detect dangerous gas levels. Carbon monoxide has traditionally been a big concern, but now in the 2012 International Mechanical Code, you see that they have added nitrogen dioxide from diesel engines as another hazardous material. The gas detection system can be tied into your emergency communication system, which would allow it to automatically alert if the ventilation system was to fail and the gas was to build to dangerous levels. Some parking facilities are also intended to provide secure access for authorized personnel. Yet, as always, people will tailgate in or prop doors open. If door propping is a problem, you can have the communication system automatically alert after a door has been open for a certain period of time. Either have it alert locally and instruct people to close the door, or automatically alert security, or even both. If your security folks are on patrol instead of at central dispatch, you can also have those emergency calls routed to go directly to the handheld radios, and it allows the officer nearest to respond most quickly. And one final requirement for any emergency communication system, of course, is redundancy. The system has to work when phone, power, and internet goes down, and really that has to work especially when everything goes wrong. The Metasecure system, for example, runs on low voltage continuous power, but each unit is backed up by long life rechargeable batteries. These help stations communicate on a variety of on networks, including an Ethernet or Wi-Fi, as well as an independent wireless mesh network, so that when those other networks, the hardwired network, goes down, you can still communicate with people in the garage.
So what are the installation issues for equipping a parking garage or facility with an IP-based emergency communication system? We'll talk about parking garage installation issues, and then we'll discuss issues specific to open parking lots. The first thing to consider for a parking garage installation is whether your garage has an IP network closets and Ethernet connections. No endpoint should be more than about 300 feet from a connection. This can be a challenge in garages with only a single network closet. In cases like that, we include network switches inside the help stations so the system can be daisy-chained together. This is a reliable and cost-effective solution. We can also use Wi-Fi to avoid most wire runs altogether. For Wi-Fi, it's important to test signal penetration at different places in the garage. We've seen a lot of garage constructions with metal floors covered with concrete. This may lead to Wi-Fi dead zones. In these cases, you may be able to enhance the signal by installing antennas. Another option is to hardwire a help station that has a signal to a station in the dead zone. For parking lot installations, you may be able to tie into the Ethernet network of an adjacent building, either using a wire run or Wi-Fi. In many cases, with parking lots, you can use directional antennas to strengthen the signal. These antennas are based on sight lines, which tend to be relatively clear in open lots. Mounting options in open parking lots include wall mount, as well as freestanding blue light tower mounts. We can provide new towers or retrofit old ones. In the case of the Metasecure system, as Tim mentioned, besides Ethernet and Wi-Fi, each help station has an independent wireless mesh communication network that continues to operate even if Ethernet and power go down. A powerful benefit of an IP-based system like Metasecure's is that you can route calls based upon your security setup. Here are several options. The software can be activated and monitored on-site or off-site. It can be from a fixed location or a mobile location. And it can be done via using a handheld two-way radio or smartphone. And finally, you can have a single or you can have multiple people simultaneously monitoring the systems.
Okay, Dave. Well, that's a good look at some of the issues that parking lot and parking garage owners and operators face in terms of safety and life safety systems. We hope that this was informative for you. We thank you for making some time to join us today. We would, as always, be glad to set up an online or in-person demonstration of the Metasecure system or answer any questions you may have. Give us a call or drop us an email to the number and addresses on the screen. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We hope you have a great holiday, and we will see you in the new year at the next webinar.